Hello, world. Ready for your weekly dose of inspiration? Warmest welcome to World Humanitarian Drive's 13th episode of Inspiring Millions Show. This is the show where we feature brilliant minds from around the world to share with us their story, one story at a time. Today, our honorable guest is the Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson. We'll get to know her inspiring story in a short while. Thank you for joining us live or on replay. I'm Viva Andrada O'Flynn, your host and Global Media Relations of World Humanitarian Drive. World Humanitarian Drive, also known as WHD, is an international NGO with global operations in 12 countries, founded in Croydon, UK by British Indian global peace activist, entrepreneur, writer, Dr. Abdul Basit Saeed. The primary vision of WHD is to promote peace, education, and trade harmony initiatives globally among everyone across the world, regardless of race, gender, religion, or nationality, living as one family. On this Inspiring Million show, we encourage you to engage with us. Please help us spread inspiration by sharing this link. We would love to hear from you. Put your questions that you would like to ask our honorable guest, the Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson, or comments that you have for us in the chat box. We will read them later on in the show. Let us also know where you are watching this. Wherever you are in the world, let us keep you company and brighten your day as we share peace, love, and goodwill. April seemed to have flown by so quickly. We started it with April Fool's Day. Today is the 30th day of April, last day of the month. It's when we celebrate Honesty Day to urge everyone to tell the truth. Tomorrow is International Workers' Day, known as Labor Day in many countries. In some countries, it's called May Day, where it's a festival of spring, such as in the United Kingdom, where our virtual stage takes us today. United Kingdom, consisting of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, is located in northwestern Europe. The UK has a world-renowned constitutional monarchy and parliamentary government, which brings us to our honorable guest today. The Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson, has always been driven by her desire to help people. As a Croydon councillor for the last 6 years, she is a Labour councillor for Eddiscombe East, sales director of Henson IT Solutions, wife and mother. Councillor Henson was born and bred in the borough, growing up in South Norwood. She attended Crossfield Nursery, where she is now a governor, and went there to South Norwood Primary and then Harris Crystal Palace. She has a BA in History from Kent University in Canterbury. She cares passionately about young people and families. Let's all welcome the Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson. Welcome. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm somewhat blown away by the introduction you gave. I'm not entirely sure I recognise the person you were describing there, but thank you so much. It's brilliant to be here, and from those that know me know I'm a great advocate for the work WHD do, and it's been brilliant to work with you over the last few months since I became mayor, so it's been brilliant, and thank you very much for a last opportunity to talk to you all.
We are very honoured that you could join us today. Could you please give us a brief background about yourself and introduce to the world in your own words who is the Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson?
Well, I think I would pick up on the point you made about the fact that I was born and bred in Croydon. I grew up in South Norwood, which is one bit in the more north, towards the north of Croydon. Not the very north, but it's getting towards the north. And I went to the local primary school and then to the local secondary school. But I was always the person that got asked to help out my friends' problems. From an awful lot of people call me Pat from EastEnders, for those that are from watchers of British television. So it was no huge surprise, I suppose, when I then ended up making a career out of it, what I'd been doing most of my childhood anyway, which was being the one that gave practical advice and tried to help out and solve people's problems. But the final trigger moment I was a particular close friend of mine you can see the full details on an event that I organised a few weeks ago, which is available on my Facebook page, came out to me and I helped her through the process. And we were very alone in the sense that we didn't know what to do. And I remember making a promise to myself that I would do everything I could to stop 2 other girls being in that position of not knowing what they needed to do, and to try and provide support and help I could to everybody. I then became, then it kind of grew and grew from there, my desire to get involved in politics. And when I finally got the opportunity to be a candidate for real as a councillor in 2013, it was one of the most exciting moments of my life. I was thrilled. I was so overjoyed. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, found out I was also pregnant with my first child, and I'm giving birth 10 weeks before my first ever election, or first ever serious election anyway. And no one would ever choose to do those 2 life-changing moments in such close proximity to one another, but I wouldn't change either of them for the world. And it's very much shaped what I've become as a councillor. And it's very much shaped what I've ended up specialising in since I got elected, which is children in particular, and especially early years.
So COVID has impacted the world. How is your being the mayor of Croydon affected by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic? What is the COVID situation in the UK?
Well, the UK is currently in a better place than some parts of the world in terms of our infection rate, but we have had one of the worst infection rates in the world. At various times, we've had, like a lot of people, 2 very, very bad peaks. And particularly the second peak was right through my whole mayoral term. The highest numbers that we ever recorded as a country were right smack bang in the middle of my time as mayor. So the role of mayor is hugely varied, but one particular part of it is to be the chief mourner, or to be the one that stands up and is the focal point in times of difficulty. And I struggle to think of something that was more difficult and challenging than the fact that Croydon's just lost its 1,000th person to COVID. We're a relatively small part of the UK, and we've been hit even worse than a lot of the UK. It was partly for a huge host of reasons. And in moments like that, civic leaders, but leaders generally, particularly civic leaders, take on another level of responsibility, and their position matters more than any other time. And that's been one of the most extraordinary and humbling experiences I've ever had, to be that person in that moment.
These are really trying times for everyone.
Yes, very much so.
Madam Mayor, you've had the COVID vaccine. What was the experience like for you?
Well, I'm halfway through. My second dose is due on the 10th of May. Actually, I literally, just before we started the interview, I had a text message from my doctor saying, if you haven't booked it, or if you'd like to have it sooner, you can have it sooner, my second dose. So I might be speaking to them later today to see if I can speed it up. I'm having the actual vaccine. I didn't even feel it. I've had COVID, at least we 99.99% sure I have, but in the UK, we didn't. It was back in last March, and we didn't have routine testing available at that point unless you actually were in hospital. So you can never completely prove it, even though you know in your heart that's what it was. And there's a general trend that seems to be those that have had COVID tend to have a slightly more of a reaction against the vaccine. So I was a bit poorly from a day or so afterwards. But the probably most notable thing was I was able to have my vaccine streamed live over Facebook. From vaccine hesitancy, sorry, for some reason I can't say that word, is a problem that's being seen all around the world. The vaccines are safe, and they are vital to us recovering as a human race. And I was keen to do whatever small part I could to try and encourage people to feel confident to go and take their vaccine. So it was a very powerful for me, and I hope rewarding thing to be able to have done.
That's really a good message, because there are many people who are scared to have their vaccine. So as the mayor, you are the borough's first citizen, and you represent Croydon at hundreds of civic, ceremonial, and social engagements throughout the year. What is the most memorable social engagement that you've had recently?
It's so hard to pick, because I mean, the thing that I often reflect on is how very varied they are. And I think you did very well when you described the different types of them. I mean, one obvious one is that the mayor is the chief mourner, as I've said previously, in times of difficulty. And we've just tragically lost His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh in the UK. And the expectation and the understanding is that in those moments, the messages from each individual borough to in his memory and of support to Her Majesty the Queen come from the mayor. So I had to do a record Croydon statement and message that was then sent, and do the commiseration letter. That's one very obvious one. It's so difficult to. Another, I suppose, a project that I've worked on, which is just literally finished yesterday, which went through a very large part of my mayoral year, was something called Croydon Connected. And I was keen, because one of the problems in terms of my background, as you said, is in history as a historian, and one of the kind of like long-term historical impacts of being of home isolation is that we won't necessarily have as many written records and as much that you can document of what is a very noteworthy time in the history of the human race. And also there's also a need for an opportunity for people to express their own experiences and to create their own personal record of their time. So I wrote to all of the primary schools and nurseries in Croydon and asked them if they'd be interested in joining a project where each of the students made one link to a giant paper chain, and which they then decorated with their own interpretations of all the things we've experienced during the times of COVID, but all the other things that as a society we've all learned over the last sort of like year and a half. For example, the outpouring of a true desire to make the world a more equal place, particularly for people of colour, that we've seen on the back of the tragic death of George Floyd. I saw a lot of people that were reflecting on that as well in what I got back. And we had 25 schools wrote back and said they were interested in taking part. And the paper chains were extraordinary. And I've then, we then used them to decorate the town hall for a few months. When they were taken down, we presented them to the Croydon Museum, who are going to keep the paper chains in their archives and do displays in coming years as part of Croydon's children's gift to the future of their experiences. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is because the final stage was I went and then visited a lot of the schools that took part. And to be able to speak to the children and hear firsthand some of their own individual, just one person experiences of COVID, but also just to thank them and tell them that there'll be a time when this is all a memory. This won't last forever. And was really powerful. And I mean, I've said already, I love children. I've got 2 kids of my own, and to be able to, just actually go and physically speak to them and see them was really brilliant.
Thank you for summing up some of the many memorable social engagements that you've had recently. I know it was pretty tough for you to do because you would just attend so many. So we'd like to know, how does a working day of a mayor look like? Could you please give us a picture of the different tasks you do in a day?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Well, I'll give you what's a typical day for me, but I'm not necessarily sure that would be what would be a typical day for mayors gone by, because the world's such a different place now than my predecessors. A typical day for me is I might have a few meetings like we're doing virtually online, a couple where I might go in person to speak to somebody if they can provide a COVID secure environment for the event to take place. And they can be hugely variable, those type of ones they are. Some of the, for example, the 2 engagements outlined in the last question, or it can be going to a fete, it can be or I've recently went and walked down from Croydon's restaurants stretch because we're in the UK, we've just recently allowed restaurants to reopen if they've got an outdoor space after our latest lockdown. And to be able to say well done to Croydon's businesses for keeping going through the toughest time. And I was really touched that one of them, who's from good friend to the Croydon Mayoralty, provided lunch as part of that for my husband, who's my consort, and myself. There's also a fundraising element. So I may have a fundraising meeting or an event that I might be planning. One example is, I'd say, of that is that my last fundraising event is a murder mystery evening, which is going to be a week tomorrow. And there might be an aspect of networking. So when I've done my various discussions, I've worked out that there's a lot of groups that are doing a work on, say, something like knife crime, for example. I can set up even now virtual seminar or virtual meetings where I can put two like-minded groups together and help them discuss. So there's an awful lot of, say, networking and being conduits involved in being the mayoralty. So it's a hugely varied day. Sometimes it's outside, sometimes it's a meeting in the parlour, sometimes it's a meeting online, sometimes it's a walkabout. It can be, that's a typical day for me, though it tends to be a bit more concentrated, particularly on the online, for obvious reasons, than it ever had been before. Whereas my predecessors would do something like 700 engagements throughout the year. And that's on top of all the meetings that they would do. That I've had approximately about 100 in my time as mayor. So it's a reduced version. My mace bearer often used to reflect on the fact that at the peak with my direct predecessor as mayor, he'd be doing sort of 50-hour weeks as standard. And that's just him. The mayor will then often do several bits on top of that.
So COVID did really restrict everybody's activities around the world.
Yes, very much so. It's that I keep coming back to people. There will be a time when this ends. It can feel like it is the darkest moment, certainly in my lifetime, but there will come a time when this is all memories for all of us, wherever we are.
That's true. Hope that time comes. We have a question from a viewer. Her name is Happy Andrada. She'd like to ask, what motivated you to get involved with a position as mayor?
Well, certainly when I was first got elected, it hadn't occurred to me that it was something I might particularly want to do. If truth be told, apart from the fact that I've been driven by my experiences beforehand and being a new mother and things like that, I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to specifically what positions I might want to hold within Croydon Council. But one of the first things I did was have a chat with the current mayor. And she was talking about some of the things that you could achieve in the role. And with myself and my husband, and we both said, oh, that sounds like, we might very much be interested in doing. So I kind of spoke to our leader and said it's something I might want to do one day. But it's never in your first term. No one ever does it in their first term. It's because you're still finding your feet in the first 4 years as a councillor so much. It's more common in your second term. So it was kind of vaguely in my head that I might want to do it and the second time around. But the ward that I have the honour of representing is a very, very marginal area. So it can change overnight which party it supports. And it ends up with this from in 2018 choosing to support one candidate from the Labour Party and one candidate from the Conservative Party. So considering the fact that put me in a very naturally political position, I assumed that would be the case. I wouldn't be able to be mayor. So started looking at other options. Then a couple of people within our group approached, look, we haven't had anyone that's yet expressed an interest in being mayor. I really think that you could still make this work even despite the unique situation you're in. So I thought about it. I went home, I spoke to my husband, spoke to my eldest son, but the youngest was far too little then to understand what I was talking about. Well, the oldest had some cultural references he could draw on. And they were both really supportive and keen of the idea, despite the situation. So I came back and said, yeah, I'd be interested. They put the discussion to the rest of the council, and the rest of the council went, yes, we really think that Maddie would be a good place for being mayor that year. This was long before COVID was even a existence in any of our minds. But it worked quite well because as you know, I run a company that's based on IT, and so I had a lot of ability with the technology that some of my colleagues would have struggled more with.
So, Mayor, I'd just like to ask, how do you measure your success as a mayor?
Well, the normal way is that you look at the numbers of engagements, and then you can rate them and how their quality from based on how much of an impact they're done on various criteria. So that's the normal way of doing it. In this year, that's a lot more difficult to do because there are less engagements to actually measure it against. I suppose it's if people feel that I've been a good, strong and supportive pair of hands through the difficult time. If that is the general consensus view, then I suppose that's where I would feel that I've succeeded. Croydon in particular has had challenges above and beyond from just all the things that are going on with COVID, which are very complicated to go into at the moment. But it has resulted in an awful lot more meetings of Croydon's full council. And one of the jobs of being the mayor is to run full council. And we don't know for sure, but we suspect that we probably broke the record for the most number of council meetings in 1 year, which means that I should be in the Guinness World Records, according to the from the head of Democratic Services anyway. I'm not so sure, but.
Well, also, you've been a part of World Humanitarian Drive events such as, I'm just going to World Humanitarian Drive because you've been involved with a lot of our many activities also as the mayor. So you've been involved with Women's Day, International Day of Conscience, and WHD is very grateful for that. What is the experience like with being with World Humanitarian Drive as a special guest in events?
I've been absolutely honoured. I was really very touched the first time that I was approached and it's blown me away that you've kept asking me to come back and be part of some of the amazing projects you do. From your founder, Dr. Saeed, and I find it impossible to say no to him for anything. If he rings me up 99 times out of 100, unless I'm literally in something I cannot get out of, I could never say no to him. And that's because you all do so much good work, and you can really see the impact. So thank you so much for letting me be part of this.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and sharing your time and words of wisdom as well. World Humanitarian Drive also has an Honoring the Honorable initiative. It's to recognize the achievers for their various contributions by honoring and awarding them. In your opinion, how important is this initiative to give recognition in these times?
I think it's absolutely essential, and it speaks to from a theme that goes connected very hand in hand with the idea of having a mayoralty in the UK, which is that you've got somebody whose job it is just to go and say thank you, because there are so many people in this world that do go above and beyond to really make a difference to our lives. And they're usually the ones that get the least thank yous and least recognition for what they do. So to have a project where you actually stand up and you congratulate the people that have put their work, that have devoted their lives to helping others, is absolutely fantastic in this very, very trying times, especially. And again, drawing on my own examples, one of the first things I did from when I became mayor was Croydon unfortunately has an awful lot of food banks that are where the need went particularly during the times of COVID, but even now it's astronomically and unacceptably high. But the people that run those food banks are absolute heroes, and one of the first things I did was to go round and say thank you to those people on behalf of Croydon, on behalf of the world, because it's people like that and the sort of people that you celebrate that keep us going.
Definitely, it's important to give recognition, to say thank you. Thank you could actually change people's days as well and make it brighter for them.
So true.
So we have another question. It's from Wayne of the Philippines. How do you ensure that Croydon is a safe place for all races? What is Croydon Council doing to stop hate crimes?
Right, well, I think it's most important to start by reflecting Croydon is one of the most diverse parts of the UK, which is a very diverse country anyway, and it's something of which Croydon in particular is rightly proud. When you become a councillor, you start from a position that you because you know your own ward and your patch, that you think you know Croydon. You don't. And you only begin to really realise this once you take on a wider role like mayor, just how varied and how extraordinary it is. Croydon, and Croydon is, to my way of thinking, and should be held up as a model to the world for how well it works and how well it proves that society does not need to be intolerant, that it's a man-made, human-made stain on our society. The Croydon Council was one of the first places to set up something which has now become nationally recognised, which is the Family Justice Centre, is one example, which focuses on tackling domestic violence, on tackling hate crime. And there's an amazing charity which Croydon works with, which is called Love Not Hate. And these are just some very tiny examples of what is a much, much wider project and part of a bigger piece. But their point is just stopping hate crime, stopping intolerance, stopping people from being subjected just on the grounds of their race, on the grounds of their gender, on the grounds of their sexual orientation, of their religion. And saying, no, we're human beings, we are all good people, and we need to love one another. And it is about making clear that it's an intolerant community of any discrimination, but also reminding people that Croydon is this beacon of multiculturalism that we need to honour and protect.
That's a really important message. What could ordinary citizens do to help build better communities?
Talk to your neighbour. I think that's something that's come out of, it's only in the UK, I can speak less for the rest of the world, but when the first lockdown hit in the UK, I saw this outpouring of love and affection and desire to help society. As a councillor, part of your job is community organising, and you can spend years chugging away trying to get people to join together into an organised group to speak with one voice and to make change happen. COVID hit, and literally overnight, we had this vast network which is known as the CCMA, the Croydon Mutual Aid Group, and they organised food banks, they organised food collections, and there was they organised support, and they helped people organise their own roads into tiny little WhatsApp groups, which meant that neighbours were checking on neighbours, that nobody, or where possible, people were not forgotten about when they were cut off from their own natural support network. So yeah, talk to your neighbour, be part of your local community, and just stop and think, is there someone in my road, is there someone in my immediate neighbourhood that I could just benefit from that phone call or that talk? And you'll discover so much is that you don't have an opportunity to if you don't make that phone call.
That's a fantastic message. We also have a message from Tongi Gra, who was saying something about wearing masks as well. Maybe that's also a thing that people could do, yes, for other people as well when they wear masks. Yes.
I mean, in terms of COVID protections, yes, absolutely essential. These save lives. They are vital to our recovery as a society. Rules and guidelines are set there for a reason. It's mandatory in the UK to wear masks on public transport and in shops, and it's encouraged and sometimes mandatory in places of work as well. They save lives. Social distancing saves lives. Washing your hands, letting fresh air in from the UK. Hands, face, covering it, and space, 2 meters, and then letting fresh air in, which is what gets rid of the COVID particles that enter the air. That's how we get through this. And it's absolutely right that you should bring up the value of masks.
Thank you so much for reminding us. And also, so it's International Workers' Day tomorrow. It's a celebration of laborers. and working classes. It's promoted by the International Labor Movement. So you're a mayor from a labor background. So
Yes.
yes, what is your message to workers around the world?
This is a really hard one. I look at the UK. The UK is going through a recession. We have got a huge number of people that are suddenly out of work that have not had that experience before. And we've also got a problem with the and I have to be a little careful not to get political because the role of mayor is very neutral. So this gets very borderline. But there is a problem and a discussion that the UK is having about how something called the gig economy works, where workers' rights are naturally eroded on one level. Other arguments would be that it provides free flexibility. I mean, it's a discussion we're having as a society, and as I was a Labour councillor, it probably wouldn't be rocket science to know how I feel about that particular issue. But we have rights. I think that's the final big thing, though. We, as human beings, have basic rights, and one of those is to a fair and decent working life, from where we're treated with respect and we are given a fair wage and fair employment rights. Remember that. It is important that you stand up for those rights because they've been hard won for by. Labour Days are as it's known in various places, and May Day, as it's known here, is a very important part in the calendar where we make sure that we remember that the rights we have all worked hard for, in terms of your rights, in terms of your employment rights, and the equal pay, where we reflect on the fact that they are things that could easily be eroded, and that we have to make sure that we stand by them and stop anybody that might not want them to be around for whatever reason, to be eroded away. We don't let that happen.
Thank you so much for your message to workers of the world. When it comes to being the mayor of Croydon, what are you most proud of?
I think a lot of people have respected, they thought it was unfair to be the mayor when you don't have a normal year during COVID. But I think I'd pick up on what I was saying earlier and say, to have been the mayor when it actually mattered, it really, really mattered. When people were turning and wanting things from their civic leaders, wanting to be someone to be giving the messages. And if I've been able to provide those and provide support, then that would be my proudest achievement as mayor. From the Croydon Connected project I was talking about, when I first became mayor, we were going through deep between our two waves, and we were able to do a few physical things in person during that summer. And I organised something called the Mayor's Reading Roadshows, where I brought from a group. I got encouraged people to come with picnics, sit in their family bubbles, away, socially distanced from everybody else, and listen to some of Croydon's amazing authors read stories. And it just built on that community feel that we've been seeing as a result of the first lockdown.
After your term as mayor of Croydon, what are your plans next?
Well, I finished being mayor on Tuesday. This is going to be not my last engagement. I've got 2 more before I finish. I'm going to be taking on a role called the Deputy Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Learning, which I am absolutely overjoyed at. As I've reflected so many times already, I love children, and my area of expertise within the council has been about children's services. So I'm really, really pleased to be going directly into what I've always wanted to focus on. Also, 2022 will be an election year, so I was spending a lot of time on helping form our manifesto for the next 4 years, and on asking people whether they felt that I've done a good job and whether they'd consider re-electing me.
Well, from everything that you've mentioned, it sounds like you've done so many, you've achieved so much in your term. So I'm just going to look at where the viewers comment. So our viewers, they come from Bhutan, Nepal, Philippines, from around the world.
Incredible. Absolutely extraordinary.
So many of our viewers have not been to the UK yet, so this would be a great opportunity for them to know more about the UK. Could you please share with us what you love most about the UK?
we were talking about this beforehand. It's a really hard question because it's like most countries, it's a very, very varied country with so much history. And there are so many different parts of the UK that are so very different from each other. It's made up of 4 separate countries that formed a United Kingdom under Her Majesty the Queen. And they are different, but even then areas within those are so varied. There's and little joke things like there are 2 counties that are right next to each other called Yorkshire and Lancashire that would hate the possibility of ever being considered to be kind of like related to one another. That goes back hundreds of years, as something called the War of the Roses, where they were against each other, which is silly and it's anecdotal, tiny little detail, but there's so much variety in the UK, and I could spend and will spend I think my entire life here and still feel like I've only touched the surface. Croydon is a very, very metropolitan, very busy and vibrant place, but it's then also got covered in greenery, and that's just one tiny microcosm of a much, much bigger country. If you come to the UK, there's all our historical sites, there's so much history here, but there's so much beauty as well. And there's so many obviously famous things like the Parliament, the mother of all parliaments, from Stonehenge, which I've had the opportunity to see twice, and is literally one of the wonders of the world. And then you've got to go up to the northern part of the UK, into Scotland, and there's so much beauty there. And you've got, or you want something a bit more lively, you've got the Edinburgh Festival, which is an area I love, the biggest arts festival in the whole world. And the population of whatever city you call it in Edinburgh, which is the capital of Scotland, doubles for a month. So it brings so many people in. It's really difficult actually to try and pick out with a place that you consider to be your home from any aspects that you would think are brilliant. So these are just things that have popped into my head when we've been talking about it.
I'm sure many people were delighted with the things that you said about the UK and are thinking about going here eventually after COVID.
Well, when we're safe to travel again, we'll be pleased to see everybody. At least I will.
Yes. Madame Mayor, so this is the last question that we ask our guests. What is your inspiring message to the world?
I think it's just remember, I keep coming back to this, time will end. There will be a time for all of us when COVID is a memory. And when I was pregnant, I talked about momentarily before, when I was pregnant with my first son, I was really unwell physically, and I had quite severe, nasty depression. And that was getting on for that was 6 years ago. And that's the lowest at that point I'd ever felt. And in 6 years from that lowest of points, I had the opportunity to become mayor of my hometown. So I want to reflect that on a wider scale. However difficult and however dark now feels, there'll come a time when, as a human society, the sun will shine again. Everything comes to an end, and COVID will, the same as everything else.
Thank you so much, Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson, for honoring us with your presence, sharing your inspiring story and words of wisdom. On this episode, you're not only the Mayor of Croydon, but also the Mayor of the world. Thank you for joining us here today, the Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson. We also would like to give you a recognition. So, in honor of international recognition for your virtue in persistently serving and inspiring humanity with your noble deeds, World Humanitarian Drive would like to award you the Worshipful Mayor of Croydon, Councillor Maddie Henson, with the Inspiring Humanitarian Award. It's signed on the 30th of April 2021, signed by Dr. Abdul Basit Saeed, WHD founder and chairman, and also it's also signed by the former president of Trinidad and Tobago, His Excellency Anthony Carmona. So thank you so much, Councillor Maddie Henson. the
Thank
Worshipful
you.
Mayor
I'm
of
really
Croydon.
touched.
Thank you so much for all your humanitarian works, and here's to many more. So you're the recipient of WHD's Inspiring Humanitarian Award. We're just going to be sending that one to you.
Thank you. For the benefit of the viewers, this is a complete surprise to me. No one mentioned this part. This is really, really touching. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the help and also all the words of wisdom you shared with us today.
Thank you.
We're very inspired.
I hope it's been of any help to anybody, and I'm really honoured.
Thank you so much. We would like to share an inspiring quotation by Steve Jobs. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. It's times like these that we realize the importance of every worker, essential jobs that we may have taken for granted in the past. There are what keep us going in these times because they are our modern day heroes. Yes. To our frontliners, we salute you. We thank you for your hard work, sacrifices, and dedication to humanity. This has been World Humanitarian Drive's Inspiring Millions show. If today's discussion inspired you, please share the link with your family and friends. Share with us your takeaways from today. We really appreciate every like and comment from you. Follow us on our social media accounts. Click subscribe on our YouTube channel, WHD Media. Visit our WHD website, www.whd.org.uk for more inspiring events. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. On behalf of WHD team, especially those working behind the scenes, WHD Chairman Dr. Abdul Basit Saeed, WHD Director of Global Operations, Ms. Sarah Wilson, WHD's 12 Honorable Secretary Generals, we thank you, our virtual audience from around the world, for joining us. To all those celebrating their birthdays and special milestones this week, happy celebrations. Happy International Workers' Day and happy May Day tomorrow. Have a wonderful long weekend, everyone. I'm Viva Andrade O'Flynn. Please join us again next Friday. We will have an interesting discussion with Dr. Janina Urasawa as we inspire the world here on Inspiring Millions Show.